Welcome to you today, and so good to be speaking to you. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Jeff. My title is I'm Pastor Emeritus, which means that I'm still involved in the church here at the People's Church, but I am playing a different sort of role. And today I'm going to be speaking to you about the 10th commandment. 10 commandments. Exodus chapter 20 verse 17 is where you find commandment number 10. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, your neighbor's staff, your neighbor's motor car, your neighbor's holiday cottage, anything that belongs to your neighbor. You're not allowed to covet it. Have you ever seen a photograph of a cow with its head stuck through a fence and it's grazing on the other side of the fence? They say the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Someone said the grass is greener where you water it. But that picture of a cow, it's talking about wanting something that it appeals to you more than what you already have. In other words, be happy with what you already have, rather than wanting what your neighbor has and thus losing sight of what you already have. The 10th commandment. Or learn to be happy for your neighbor. Learn to be happy that your neighbor's got what your neighbor's got. Just to say at this point, nobody's life is as good as you think it is. Everybody has got their problems. In Afrikaans they say, elke huis het sy kruis. I don't know if there's an equivalent in the English language for that saying. So the 10th commandment is about community and relationship, getting on with your neighbors. How important do you think this commandment is? I say to you today that it is very important. Not coveting is the key to your own happiness and your own health. Proverbs 14 verse 30. Proverbs 14:30. A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Let that sink in for a moment. Coveting doesn't only make you dangerous, it also makes you unwell. So number one, coveting is a feeling. It's not a deed. It's not an action. So the 10th commandment is saying, don't feel this way. You're not allowed to feel this way. It's an emotion. So this command is saying, you're not allowed to feel a certain way about what your friend or your neighbor has. So how on earth do you control the feelings that you have? Apparently, the message and the expectation from the 10th commandment is that you can control the way that you feel. Perhaps that's a new thought for you. Perhaps you're not used to the thought that you can't help how you feel. You can help how you feel. The saying is, you can't stop a bird from flying over your head. But you can stop a bird from making a nest in your hair. Not in my case, but in other people's cases. In other words, you can't allow something to preoccupy it. You've got to dismiss things. Things arrive unbidden, but they stay by invitation. So you can control the way that you feel. Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 to 13. Paul writes some amazing words. He says, I'm not saying this because I am in need. The church in Philippi had given him a gift, and this was his thank you letter. I'm not saying that this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through Him who gives me the strength. The word learned appears twice in that passage when he talks about contentment. I've learned the recipe. I've learned the recipe for being content. Contentment. Don't covet. Let that sink in. I'm saying that for the second time. Happiness doesn't depend on things. It is just not that the more I have, the happier I am. So it's not about how much stuff you have. And the converse is equally true. It is just not true that the less that I have, the happier I am. No. Poverty and struggle is not the secret to happiness, nor is plenty. Paul says, I've been on both sides of that line, and I've learned how to be content. Some people can't be comfortable if they're living a life of blessedness, of plenty. They feel guilty about it. Other people feel they can't make peace with the fact that they're living in straitened circumstances. Happiness is a byproduct of contentment. Contentment is learned as I go about my life. So Paul had to learn some lessons. The 10th commandment is a learned lesson. I must be happy when my neighbor does well, and I must not want what he has and I don't have. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 6 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. There's an inner space that needs to settle down. That's what the 10th commandment is about. For your own well-being, your own health, your own just to live a good life. Learn to be a contented person. Coveting and envy, number 2, is a gateway emotion. So, number 1 is it's a feeling, and you've got to learn how to be content. The second point that I'm making is that coveting or envy is a gateway emotion or feeling. You see, coveting opens the doorway or opens the gate to action. There's a terrible story in the Bible, and the Bible does have some terrible stories. The story is of Naboth and Ahab and Jezebel. Ahab and Jezebel, the king and his wife, who was a terrible woman, and 3 lives were lost over a veggie patch. It's amazing what people will fight about. You read 1 Kings chapter 21 and the story that follows and the chapters that follow. You see Ahab, the super wealthy, powerful political leader. King Ahab looks out of his window and saw a vineyard. Oh, he thought, that's perfectly located for a veggie patch. Who does that vineyard belong to? Naboth, he was told. Well, sell it to me. He approached Naboth and said, I'll give you a fair price for it. Naboth said to him, it's been in my family for years and it's not for sale. And so the next thing that Ahab did was he lay on his bed and he sulked. Jezebel came and said, why are you sulking? Do something about it. He wanted something that he didn't need, but he wanted something that his neighbor had that he could see out of the window. And so they orchestrated Naboth's death. Then came, as a direct consequence, Ahab's death, with the dogs licking up his blood. And you have Jezebel's death, with the dogs eating up her remains. Terrible story. Don't read it to your children at night time. It's enough to give you nightmares. It shows how much destruction can be caused by that green-eyed monster called jealousy and coveting. They are cousins, envy and jealousy. How many of us have seen the damage that gets done in families just by envy, by jealousy, and by coveting? We've all got stories to tell. It's so destructive. Why did God say in commandment number 10, don't covet? Was it for His good? No. It was for our well-being, our happiness, and our good. The commandments are not so that God can be happy. The commandments are so that we can be happy. They're not things that hem us in. They are things that set us free. That's how we should read those commandments. So the 10 commandments are for our sake, not for God's sake. To repeat myself, because this is so important, this green-eyed monster can cause huge harm and damage and can break up friendships and families and marriages and all sorts of things. It can cause havoc. So don't covet. Be content. Why? Because there are terrible emotions that can be set loose in your inner world. It can make you unwell. It can stop you enjoying what you already have. And it can lead to overtly destructive behaviors. Number 3, what about the more subtle expressions of coveting and envy? Maybe it's not just a piece of land, but maybe it's just something secret inside of yourself. The Australians are known as an egalitarian nation. In other words, they value equality very much. They don't like the thought of a royal family. They don't like the thought of being ruled over. They have a value system that says, hey, no one's going to boss me around. Egalitarianism, equality. And from that nation, a phrase was coined, the tall poppy syndrome. That refers to the resentment towards anybody who does really well. In the army, the motto was, when you go for a training run, when they're chasing you up and down, never be the first to arrive back from your run, and never be the last to arrive back from the run, because those two groups get the attention. You don't want attention. You want to blend and just be normal and be in the middle. Tall poppy syndrome. Just blend in. The tall poppy syndrome is when people make it their business to cut other people down to size. Keep everyone the same height. Don't let anybody get ahead. If somebody gets ahead, target them and pull them down. It's a secret hope that people will crash down off their pedestal of accomplishment. It's the impulse that says, who does she think she is? Or he's getting too big for his boots. You've heard those phrases? You see someone with a new car, you say, I wonder how he affords that. That's the tall poppy. We don't want anybody to shine. We don't want anybody to get ahead. That's linked to the 10th commandment. The tall poppy syndrome uses social media as its megaphone. The idea of fairness. Let me tell you something about the Bible. The Bible is not about fairness. We value fairness so highly. Our children, they use that phrase. It's not fair. It's not fair. Everyone's got to have exactly the same value of Christmas present. Everybody's got to have exactly the same number of sweets. So we'll count out the jelly tots because it is a matter of fairness. Everyone should be equal. Jesus told a story about fairness. in the parable of the workers in the vineyard. So you may know the story. It's about a man who goes out, sees someone on the side of the road and says, "Hey, come work in my vineyard. Come help me, I'm digging a hole for a swimming pool. I'll pay you X amount for the day." Then he goes out at 10 o'clock, sees someone, "Why aren't you working?" "No, no one's offered me a job." "Come, I'll pay you." 12 o'clock, "Come, I'll pay you." 2 o'clock, he goes, finds another person, fourth person, "Come, I'll pay you." At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he goes out and finds some lonely soul still standing on the side of the road. He says, "Come, I'll pay you." Then when pay time comes, he gives the one who's worked for 1 hour the same as the one who works the whole day. So the one who works the whole day is now upset because he doesn't think it's fair that he should have worked the whole day and been paid the same as someone who's only worked for 1 hour. And so he complains. And so the employer says to him, "I offered you X amount. Did I pay you X amount? Or did I cheat you?" He said, "No, you paid me what you said you would, but it's not fair." He said, "If I want to be generous to the person who started at 4 o'clock, what's that got to do with you?" Jesus was hitting the idea of fairness on the head. Now, I know it's about the Jewish nation and the Gentiles coming in at the last moment when the Jews have carried the burden. I know about that primary meaning, but the principle holds true. Fairness is, I don't need fairness. I need mercy and I need grace in my life, not fairness. So, we can talk about vineyards and workers and digging holes. Maybe that's not you, but imagine this. One day, you're happy in your job, you think you're doing well, you're happy with your salary, you're happy with your working conditions, but one day you come to the photocopier and you lift it up to photocopy a document, and there you see the salary slip for a colleague of yours. And you have a look and you see how much they're earning. And you see that your colleague is earning more than you. Suddenly you're not happy with your salary anymore. And all hell breaks loose. And a whole dispute, and you end up leaving your job that you were happy in because you found out that your colleague is earning more than you have. And so, fairness, that's the feeling that we have. Tall poppy syndrome. Nobody must be paid more than me. And so that is what the Bible is not advocating for. That story of the workers in the vineyard, they said it's not a complaint, or it wasn't about fairness. It was actually about generosity. They didn't want the master to be generous to anybody. So there's Peter and John at the time of between the crucifixion and the ascension. And Jesus tells Peter how he's going to die. First thing he does is he turns around and points to John and says, "What about him?" And Jesus says, "If he stays alive until I come, what's that got to do with you?" And John did die a martyr's death. But Peter wanted to know about John. Hey, if I'm going to have a difficult ending, is he also going to have a difficult ending? Or is he going to have a nice, difficult ending? Or he's not going to die at all? And Jesus was basically saying, mind your own business, live your own life, run your own race. Don't covet somebody else's destiny for yourself. Stop looking over the fence. Stop mowing the tall poppies. Let me address this question. Am I allowed to improve my lot in life? Does contentment mean that I've got to stay just where I am and just be happy with everything in my life? Or am I allowed to make progress? Or am I allowed to improve my life? I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that you have to say this is who I am and this is where I must stay. Joshua chapter 15, when the land was being divided, Caleb's daughter came to Joshua and Caleb, and said, "Listen, you've given me a piece of land, but I've got no water on it. Give me also streams of water. And so her land was expanded so she could have water on her area that she had to develop. And so she wanted to improve herself. This is where prayer comes in. Prayer is to change your circumstances, to ask God's help. So I'm not speaking against self-improvement. I'm not speaking against ambition. I'm not speaking against progress in life. I'm not saying you're a farm boy, just stay on your farm and wear your felt spoons your whole life. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying something better and something different. Don't covet. The prayer of Jabez, 1 Chronicles chapter 4. He started off life in a poor way and he prayed. The whole book has been written about it, a famous book. And he said, please don't let my life be a painful life. God heard his prayer. So you don't have to just accept your circumstances as being set by God. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't covet what your neighbor has. God's got something good for you. And it may look different to what somebody else has got, but God has got something good for you as well. Jesus didn't go around cutting people down to size. He highlighted the generosity of the poor widow. He celebrated the faith of a Roman soldier. He said of Mary of Bethany, he said, you're going to be really famous, or she's going to be really famous for what she's done. So he was into elevating people, and you can be elevated too. Let me end by talking about the remedy of the feeling. I said birds can fly over your head, but you don't have to let them make a nest in your hair. How do you actually chase the birds away? Well, if I was to have a thick rope, on Sunday morning I'm going to have the rope, and I was to have two people, and they would hold the rope on each side. If the one gave that rope a tug like that, the energy of that movement would travel like that, and it would reach this person's hand, and this person's hand would be moved involuntarily by the energy that had traveled through. And so this can trigger this. Seeing this can trigger this. However, if this person sets that pulse going down the rope, and this person on the other side gives their own jerk, then the waves come, and when they meet in the middle, they cancel each other out. I say that as an illustration of how to deal with coveting. Gratitude is the way that you tug the rope on the other side and cancel out those unbidden emotions that come your way. Gratitude, looking at what you've already got. Hey, there's a secret there. Looking at how God has blessed you. And He has. Write down 10,000 reasons, Matt Redman wrote, for my heart to find. He searched and he found reasons to thank God. If you would just take the energy and the time and devote a moment to writing down the things that God has blessed you with, you will be putting a tug into that rope and cancelling out the emotions of coveting. Send gratitude down the rope. Appreciate others. Don't worry about who gets the glory. Thank God for what you already have. Did you sleep warm last night? Do you know what hunger feels like? Do you know what thirst feels like? Do you know what the comfort of friendship feels like? We've got many things to thank God for. So, do not covet. There's a great deal to do with that commandment in our everyday life, and it's a very practical commandment. Yea, endeth the lesson. And I want to say, God bless you. The things that only you can do for yourself. And I'm going to pray for you that God will give you the resources that you need to live a life of contentment. Lord Jesus, help each one of us with our own personal journeys. We've all got our dragons to slay. Help us to live contented lives. Amen.